Well, hello once again, and welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. I am your host, Michael Hingson, and today we get to talk to Zarko Dimitrioski, who is in Macedonia, and he wears a lot of different hats. It's really kind of interesting. He has a 17 plus season show. He's an entrepreneur, needless to say, but he has so many different hats. I think it'll be better if we let him describe all of that. He's an actor, and gosh, I don't know what all, but he does a lot of different things, and he is talking with us all the way from Macedonia, I believe, right? So welcome.
Exactly, Skopje, Macedonia, and Mike, it's an honor to be with you.
Well, I'm glad that we're able to do this, and really looking forward to being able to chat about all the different things that you do and why you do them. And as I point out to people, it's also all about showing people that they can be more unstoppable than they think they can. And we just way often too much underrate ourselves, and we think we're more stoppable than we are. We're more unstoppable than we think we are, and people need to learn that. Well, anyway, we'll get to all that in the course of today. But I want to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about you and kind of your background, maybe where you started from, what got you into acting, and then all the other things that you do.
Well, I will try to keep it brief. So my media career started when I was just 6 years old. I got into this child's drama studio, which was in the public sector television station, the national Macedonian television station and radio. And from that point on, I just continued the whole media and entertainment journey, even through high school when I worked at a sports television station. Then in the end of high school and when I was starting college, I started working for A1 television, which was then quite literally not only the highest rated TV network, but it had AMRs and reach that was far beyond anything that can happen in today's day and age. And over there, I started doing a talk show among many other things. And then when the television station got shut down because of political reasons, let's say, I mean, it's a thing that's common in the Balkans. It got closed. And after that, I just continued doing the talk show that I started at A1 Television, but this time as a private enterprise, as a private production, which led to me and my brother opening up a marketing agency. And now, like some 15 years has gone by, and we're one of the biggest independent agencies. We are affiliated with the wonderful TBWA network, which is one of the biggest in the world, and we have the pleasure to do business with them. But still, we're independent and work for some of the biggest Macedonian regional brands, but also a lot of work in the UK and the US. So let's start with that.
What kind of work do you do in the US?
So it's mainly working either with directly with companies or with agencies that are subcontracting work to us.
Mm-hmm. What got you started at a young age and just being involved in acting and so on?
Well, to be honest, my mother was getting her doctor's degree in medicine. She's a radiologist.
Okay.
And when I was a little baby, she was studying a lot, and she was always with books. And from what she's told me, I developed this sense of love towards letters and reading. And I got interested in books from a very, very early age. And when I was just like 2.5 years or something like that, I started reading. Then I learned the Cyrillic alphabet, the Latinic alphabet. And when I went to school, I was bored. And I was a problem for the teacher. Let's put it that way.
Because you had read so much?
Well, yeah, you know all of the letters, and you're
Yeah.
nervous because the other kids don't know them, and you're being a smartass, and
Okay.
saying, "Ah, how can you not know this letter? This is C, this is F, or whatever." And she called my parents and said, "Listen, there's an audition for the child's drama studio. Just get him there because he needs some sort of a filter where he can let his energy out." And luckily, there were like 700 or so kids there. I was one of the three that got in, and I stayed there up until the age of 15, which was the regular age. You got in at age 7, but I got in at 6 because I went to school a bit earlier, and then stayed till about 15.
Wow. So was that something you did in addition to going to regular school, or did you do school there?
Yeah.
Oh,
It,
in
it was
addition.
it was kind of a proper it was sort of like work because we had to go there. I mean, it's a lovely time, don't get me wrong. It's one of the best memories I have from my life, going 2 or 3 days a week, doing radio shows, radio dramas, plays. We starred in many TV series, TV shows, not only for kids, but also whenever the national television broadcaster needed a production where there were children involved, it was always us from the child's drama studio that were involved in it. So I sort of became like a popular kid from very, very early on, sort of like Macaulay Culkin was in the US.
Hmm. I hear you. Well,
And
wow.
that gives you a ton of issues in the next stages.
A lot of ways to go with that. Well, issues like what?
Yeah.
You tell us.
I mean, when you're a kid and everybody knows you, you really tend to inflate your ego.
Hmm.
Let's put it that way. So you sort of think that you're unstoppable, but in the bad way, Mike.
Hmm.
And you need to kind of grow and get to the maturity stages in order for you to figure out that actually for you, in order to be unstoppable, you really have to first of all know yourself, as the popular saying goes, know thyself, etc., and then figure out, aha, it's a whole different dimension that gives you that unstoppable feeling. It's not the ego inflation, it's a totally different thing.
Did anything specifically happen, or did you come up against something that really caused you to realize that you had to kind of change the way you were doing things and that unstoppability was a little bit different than what you thought?
Well, you get that sense of like being a Superman, and when you're young, it's good. I mean, I honestly believe that let's say a positive. I mean, when you're self-confident, it can be a good thing, especially
Hmm.
when you're young, because it can give you some edge. It can give you an advantage over your peers because most of them, obviously, being young, are not so secure, etc. But as time goes by, and you grow and you get into your let's say late 20s, early 30s, being so overconfident can be not a good thing, but it can be a negative thing
Yeah.
because all of a sudden the stakes are higher, the risks are bigger. You get into more serious relationships, you start developing a family, etc., and all of a sudden it's not quite you that's the center of the world and the main actor of the story, and you sort of become aware that it's a movie that we all play in. You're not the lead.
Did did someone kind of help bring you to that realization, or how did you discover that it isn't quite what you thought it was?
Well, it's my brother probably played the biggest
Mm.
role in it, but it's not a point in time where you figure that out because, like with most things, it's mileage that has to happen before something kicks into gear. Is the same thing with for example being confident on stage. Many people have stage fright, and since I was a kid, I always looked looked down on that, because it was so natural for me to be on stage and talk with people, talk to huge crowds of people, etc. But you sort of realize, yeah, you just have the mileage. You're not superior in any way. You just have the mileage.
Yeah.
So in that sense, going back to what we were saying, my brother has we have talked about that so many times, and it just had to grow gradually to a point where you understand it for yourself, and the thing that your brother has been talking to you, it's just a reassurance. It's not a motivator. It's like, oh yeah, he was saying the right things all of the time. It was just you who hasn't been ready to hear it or accept it.
I know. I'm just thinking that I hear so often that one of the top fears that a lot of people have is getting up on stage and speaking.
Yeah.
And I intellectually understand why that is, but that has never been a problem for me. And I don't look down on people who are afraid. But at the same time, I also understand they don't need to be afraid. They have to come to the realization, like if they're speaking before an audience, audiences want you to succeed. They're not looking, unless you're really a jerk and they don't like you. Audiences want you to succeed, and they want to hear what you have to say. And when you realize that, and when you realize that you don't need to be afraid because they're really there to support you and they're there to learn from you, then you can do a much better and more productive job.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the main thing is, let's say, preparation slash knowledge. Because in order for that to happen, in order for that calm to be created, you really have to be sincerely confident in what you're saying, or that you're prepared for that. Because that way, that will create the calm. The calm will build the trust, and the trust then will let ideas land.
Yeah, and it's a process, and I appreciate that. But it is something that we all can learn, but we have to be open to it. It's like fear, and something that I talk about a lot is the whole issue of fear and how fear overwhelms us in so many ways, and it doesn't need to be that way. We can learn that, in fact, we can use fear as a very powerful tool to motivate us and to help us and to guide us, rather than let it being something that just overwhelms us and drives us crazy.
Yeah. But you really have to have that clear sense of being positive in your mind, that it will all play out a certain way that will be okay. Fear can be really a real blockage, a real debilitator in that sense. When
if you allow that to, if you don't, and if you allow that to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so you do a lot of different things. You're an agency founder, you're a board member, you're an actor, talk show host, and you do so many different kinds of things. Is there something that really, well, and I didn't mention Kellogg alum also, and we want to talk about what Kellogg is, but what is the common thread that goes through all of those, or is there one?
I guess it's just keeping that child's nature alive, because Mike, I always admired Renaissance men, not from the period. I mean, there are some really great chaps from the Renaissance, don't get me wrong, but like, I'm talking about the person with a lot of knowledge, various interests, etc. So I always liked that thread of life in the ancient times, where people were born and grew up as students, then became soldiers, then became lieutenants, then generals, then they got into trade and business and became successful businessmen, after which they became members of the Senate, leaders, and at the end they became mentors to a future leader or whatever. So it's an evolution which has always been so logical and natural to me. And in a sense, I really admire those people who just keep fresh and constantly learn and do not become one thing and stay that one thing all of their lives, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key is that somebody who follows the progression that you just mentioned and is willing to go all the way and get to the point where you start mentoring and you teach that next generation and you show them how they can become leaders and how they're important. That's the important part because there are so many people who won't do that. They just think they're the end all.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying. You have to see the gratification in doing that, but it's a thing that can be faked. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't feel it, then you really shouldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? You just make a mess out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to see that end all that no matter what you do, um, there are ways that you can help the next generation, and that's important
Yeah.
to do.
And I really appreciate mentorship. I really appreciate people who are just unselfish with their experience and knowledge. As you said, they are rare, but they're like diamonds. I mean, when you find one, you really, really polish that thing for as
Yeah.
long as you can.
So tell me about Kellogg and what it means to be a Kellogg alum.
I really was fortunate enough to get acquainted with Mike Zafirovsky. Mike Zafirovsky is one of the biggest, uh, let's say, C-level executives that modern America has. He's a Macedonian-born citizen who is an expat and has moved when he was about, I don't know, 15, 16 years old in the US and became a huge, like I said, C-level executives working with GE, Motorola, Nortel, Boeing, whatever. He has this program of finding the next generation of leaders in Macedonia, and he gives a partial scholarship for Kellogg at Northwestern University through an association called Macedonia 2025. And it's an executive development program. It really, I mean, it's not only motivation or even knowledge. It really opens up a broad spectrum of things, the way you look at things, the way you experience things, the way you feel or react to certain things. And it's really specifically tailored for C-level executives, for owners, etc. And it really was a blast to be there. I mean, I have a lot of frameworks that I actually use it in my Monday mornings or whatever, like understanding the arena you're playing at, designing the optimal value proposition for either customers, collaborators, company, then pulling on the 7 levers like product, service, brand, comms, distribution, price, incentives. I really found out in my time there that like strategy without tactics is a slow victory, as they say, but tactics without strategy is what was it? Noisy defeat.
Yeah. Yeah. There, you need both.
You need both, exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a wonderful thing.
So what is Kellogg? I mean, where did the word come from?
Kellogg School of Management. It's
Is it a person?
with uh,
Is Kellogg a
where did
person's
the
name?
I'm not sure about the history of the name, but I guess it is definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's established long ago. I can check that out while we're at it.
Well, that's okay. But um, so that was here in the U.S.
Yeah, I found it.
at
I'm
Northwestern.
seeing it now. Yeah, Northwestern found it in 1908.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's one of the biggest management schools, together with the 3 or 4 that we all know, like Stanford and Harvard, etc. So it's a
yeah.
separate branch within Northwestern University, just for full-time executive MBAs and beyond.
Cool. Did you go beyond an MBA?
Not yet,
Not
not
yet.
yet. Not yet. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah,
Well, but clearly you put a lot of that to use.
yeah.
And so, what's the company that you and your brother have founded?
Well, so it grew to be a full service agency. We do creative production, animation, web development, social media, you name it. So we do it all. A 360 scope of services for mainly, let's say, domestic clients, the biggest brands and companies in Macedonia and the region as well. We are TBWA partner for Macedonia, Kosovo, and Albania, those three markets, but we work the ex-Yugoslavian markets as well. And like I said, we do a lot of work with other big agencies and marketing holdings from the UK mainly and the US, but also directly with brands. We have a wonderful non-executive director on board from the UK, Mr. Julian Roberts, who's really a seasoned professional with 30 plus years of experience in marketing. He has been at senior roles with cybersecurity giants like ESET, Kaspersky. So he opened up a lot of doors for us in the UK, and we've been really, really blessed to have him on our team.
Mm, that's cool.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, really good.
so since you've been involved in media and especially having had a 17-year talk show, what has that
Yeah.
taught you about people?
Oh, well, to be
Probably
honest,
you've seen a lot.
yeah. I mean, honestly, if I can put it in a nutshell, is that listening beats talking, and that being prepared, like I said, it brings you calm, and the calm brings you trust. I guess when people feel understood, they become open to being persuaded, and I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just good for business. So yeah, probably listening beats talking. Yeah, you use your ears more than your mouth.
Well, yeah, I mean, listening always counts. I remember reading part of something in a Dale Carnegie book about the fact that he had a conversation with someone, and I think he asked a question. And they ended up talking for a long time, and he listened, but the person said, "This has been a great conversation" at the end. They
Yeah,
thought it was,
yeah,
and that's the way it ought to be. Listening is so important.
yeah, exactly. I remember that paragraph. It
Yeah.
was how do we influence and
How to
influence
win
people,
from,
right?
yeah, it was
Yeah,
from there. Yeah. But
exactly.
it was fascinating that he
That book
observed that,
is
and it's true.
just so true. I mean, that book should be a mandatory read for everyone.
It is as timeless now as it ever was.
Yeah,
And it doesn't
exactly.
matter if the language is a little bit older or whatever, but the concepts in the book is as timeless as ever. And
Not
I
at
agree,
all.
people should read it.
Not. I mean, there are these fantastic books from way back. Another one that pops in mind is there's this book from 1916. It's a small book. It's called Obvious Atoms. Uh, it's from Robert Abdegraff. Uh, it's really small. I mean, you can literally read it in like 2 hours or an hour and a half, something like that. And it tells you the story of this advertising gentleman who becomes a prominent a star in the advertising world only because he devotes the focus and time into really probing for those gems that are not on the surface. So whenever he works on a campaign for and mind you, this is 1916. Whenever he works for a campaign for a company, he talks to the people in the factory, with the middle management, with the senior management, with the owner. He strolls around, watches people at work, etc. And he always finds that gem that's just so obvious, but nobody's seen it before.
Hmm.
And he builds the campaign with it. And that's why he's called Obvious Atoms. and it really rings true. There's this legendary campaign for Rolls-Royce that I believe David Ogilvy wrote the copy for, which says within the new Rolls-Royce, the loudest thing you can hear at 60 miles an hour is the clock. And he heard this exact sentence from a factory worker when he was strolling and talking with them. And he just said, wow, this is just so good. I will use it. And it was a blast.
Yeah. And what an interesting thing to say. The loudest thing you hear is the clock, which really says a lot about the car, much less the clock.
Exactly. And they will tell him, wow, you're such a good copywriter, etc. And he just nicked it from a factory worker. But yeah, you have to devote your time and attention and listen and talk to people. And that's why obvious Adams was such a success. And I recommend that one as well. And again, 1916, man. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll have to see if I can find it in an accessible form somewhere. I haven't read that, but it makes
audio
sense
books
to read.
for some $3 or something like that. It's really a pocket change. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Well, so Mike Zavorowski, you says, do all you can with what you have and the time you have and in the place you are. How does that guide what you do? What do you think about that?
For example, it really resonates where you're in a small market like Macedonia, because when you think of it, constraints aren't a cage, they're a compass, So it is something we often talk about with my dear friend Branko Azeski, who's the president at the Economic Chamber, where I serve as a member of the management board, as you said, that you have to turn it into a positive thing and just use whatever you can to make most out of your situation, because it's easy to say they have it better, or they have more resources, or they have a bigger market. Yeah, but if you play it well, if you play it smart, and if you, like you said, if you do all you can with what you have in the time you have in the place you are, you really can push boundaries and go miles and surprise yourself with what you can do. But the key thing is that you shouldn't speak from the ego. You should speak from the mind. You should speak from a part of you that's wise. And that's why, again, I go back to that gnosis eafton, which is in Greek, know thyself. You really should know yourself. Be honest with yourself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Where I'm playing at? What is the market? Which are my characteristics that will make me go big? And focus on them. Do that. A lot of people want to do it all and just burn, and they end up being miserable and just pointing fingers at it's because of that, it's because of you, it's because of them, it's because of the country, it's because of politics. There's always someone to blame, Mike.
Yeah. And we're always, or most often, seeking someone to blame rather than looking at ourselves.
We are, but it's a losing game. It's a totally losing proposition.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like there isn't a single book while we were at books that just started with I had this idea, I started the business, everything went great, that's it. It doesn't happen. Life is struggle, let alone business. So embrace that thing and just make the most of it. Focus on what you're doing good. Focus on what can make you differentiate yourself. Build on that. Like, if not, you can only become stopped by obstacles.
Well, and in reality, whether it's a smaller arena like Macedonia or here in the United States or other places, the fact of the matter is it's really still the same thing. You're going to do better if you really look at it from what you are, what you can do, And as
Yeah.
you said, you look at it from the mind and the heart rather than the ego. And it doesn't matter where you do that, it's the same thing.
Yeah, because there's always potential. There's always possibility. There's always thing that can make you differentiate yourselves in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Macedonia is a small country, but then again, the net salary is lower than what it is in the US. Okay, that's a
Oh,
differentiation. That can
yeah.
be a potential. Okay, let's use that.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, there's always things you can venture in that will bring you benefit. It's just that you have to be strategic about it and find them wisely.
And that's true anywhere in marketing and anywhere in business and in anything that we do. It's finding what differentiates, finding what strengths you have, and playing to those is so much more important than anything else.
Exactly. And just to add, like another, I would say philosophy or way of looking at things, people should really spend zero time on what they could have done, because
Yeah.
I see a lot of people just hang around that vertigo of, oh yeah, I should have. Like, devote all of your time on what you might do or should do in the future, not what you could have done, because it's a drag.
Yeah. You can do shoulda, coulda, woulda all day long, but the real question is, what are you going to do next?
Exactly.
And
Focus on
what,
that one.
yeah, and that's always what you have to do. What do I learn? I talk a lot in my latest book, Live Like a Guide Dog, about and it's a book about lessons I've learned from working with 8 guide dogs, because I think there is so much more to learn from dogs
Yeah.
if we really work at it than there is from most all of the big experts in leadership and teamwork and so on.
Mm.
Because with a dog, you're speaking a different language, and the way they live their lives. They don't do what if. They don't do the things that
Mm.
we do that cause so much fear. And it isn't to say that they can't be afraid of something, but they live in a completely different way that we could certainly take lessons from. And I think
Yeah.
it's so important to do that.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Exactly.
Yeah. So, the bottom line is they're very good at, well, it's time to move on to the next thing. And they do. And they have no problem doing it. They don't do
Yeah.
what if with everything. And there's a place for what if in the world. I spoke
Yeah.
last year at the Business Continuity Institute hybrid conference over in London, and one of the people who was telling me about the institute when we were talking about me coming over was, we're the what if people. We're the people that look at business. We're the people that are hired in businesses, and our job is to look at, what if this happens? How do we react? What if that happens? How do we react? But the point is that they don't do it out of fear. They do it out of a strategic need to plan for things that may never happen, but they also do it without saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if this happens? It is more, well, if this happens, this is what we do. And
Yeah.
as they point out, they're not really paid attention to until there is an emergency, and then they're in high demand.
Yeah. I guess. I really love what you said about the dogs, man. They would make wonderful businessmen, to be honest.
Oh, they would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's so true. When I was in the World Trade Center, my guide dog at the time, Roselle, was afraid of
Yeah.
thunder, but there was no thunder on September 11th. Well, there was in the early morning. We were at home and there was a storm, but in the World Trade Center with the explosions and so on, it wasn't thunder. And so many people have a hard time grasping that what the dog heard wasn't thunder. It was something
Right.
different. But we got home that night after all the things that happened, after all the running from the towers collapsing and
Right.
other things like that. We get home, and my dog wanted to go play tug of war with my retired guide dog and had no interest in doing anything else. It was all over.
Right.
And as the veterinarian said the next day when I spoke with them at Guide Dogs for the Blind, dogs don't do what if. There was nothing that threatened the dog. And so the dog was fine. When it was over, it was
Yeah.
over. And we could learn so much from that kind of a lesson.
We've made it through. Let's just be grateful and move on.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's move on, because that's all there is to it.
Wow. Yeah.
So you've worked with a lot of people. You've observed a lot of people in business and in so many
Yeah.
different things. What's the biggest misconception that you wish people would get rid of?
Well, to be honest, there are a lot of misconceptions in the business world, but let's say within these marketing sectors, or with marketing people or owners, I would say that growth doesn't equal loyalty programs, uh, because the evidence is pretty clear that brands grow mainly by penetration, meaning they grow by having more buyers, different buyers, not by squeezing loyalty and
Mm-hmm.
focusing on what they already have. So whenever you create the balance between brand building and activation, it should always be more on the brand side. If activation converts demand, brand creates it. And a lot of people in marketing and in business, they really tend to forget that, because they sort of view that dollar spent on brand as being a waste. And this dollar spent on activation or a promo offer, that's a tangible thing, because they can measure, quote unquote, the ROI, which is just so not true. So not true. I mean, we have the data. A lot of decades have went by. If you focus on reading the right stuff, for this is in the field of behavioral economics. It's really obvious that in order for brands to grow, that should focus on brand building, brand image, and being accessible, physically and mentally as well. So being easy to find, easy to buy, but also easy to being thought of, let's say. So that would be one misconception I would say out of top of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, brand is so important, and people in marketing, I've found way too many people who do underestimate what it can do. But brand is very important, and it is something that we do need to focus on, because that's where the trust is really generated.
Yeah. I mean, there's this famous graph of success of a company focusing on either brand or these activations. And the line with the activations, it just goes up and down on the timeline, up and down, up and down. But it always comes back from where it started. There isn't a growth. With the focus on brand, the growth itself, it's not that speedy, but it's a certain way up. It just builds on whatever was before. And then, when enough time goes by, focusing on activations and promos, you're just stuck at where you've been at the beginning. But focusing on brand, you are way higher than when you were starting.
Why is that?
It's just that you plant a seed in people's mind. It's the Coca-Cola reason for advertising. Just being present mentally and being easy to buy physically. That's the key. Brands should only focus on these two parts. Are you easy to buy? Are you easy to find? And are you easy for me to think of you? Do you come top of mind, as we say in the marketing world?
Yeah. How do you how do you make sure that with the things that you do that happens, and that people do find you easy, they find you top of mind, and so on? What's your secret? Maybe there isn't a secret, but what do you do?
The secret is that there are no shortcuts, I would say. I mean, you really have to go through all of the motions. You really have to dig deep into the business of the client, and understand their needs, understand their like you should know yourself, you should know them as well, I would say, and you should also find which parts of their business they're not sincere about, and point those out and see how do they react, and are they open to certain changes in those aspects. Because like it's not a thing where the client is always right. I mean, yeah, you can do what the client wants, but your job as a marketing agency is to put them in a place where they can win. If they think otherwise, it's your job to say that, listen, I think this would be a better path for us forward. Then again, you're the client. I will listen to you if that's mandatory. Don't have a problem with that. But just hear me out. This is what I think would be better. And a lot of agencies don't do that because they're pleasers and just yes man, trying to collect the checks. Growth doesn't come that way. You really should understand the business like it is yours, and you should ask the tough questions like it is your business. And not many owners or CEOs like that when somebody's probing them that way, but it's just a necessary thing in the path towards a business win.
Well, and when that's occurring, you do have to sometimes be a teacher, and you have to say, "Here's why I'm asking these questions, and this is what I'm trying to explore with you." And
Right.
we can come to a reasonable conclusion, but we really have to look at all aspects of it. And sometimes people can teach, and sometimes they just have no interest in doing that, as you said.
Right, and it's a conversation. You're not there to put them in their spot.
Right.
You're not there to be some sort of I'm the teacher, you're the student. Not at all. It's a conversation. I mean,
Right.
they themselves don't are not in a place of having those conversations that often, because first of all they're not challenged within their environment, but second of all, and even more important than that, they live in a bubble. They don't
Yeah.
view the business from the outside. They view it from within, and it's not an easy thing to be honest, sincere, and objective about your business, any business. Me for my, you for yours, Mike. It's always good to have an angle and perspective that's from far out, and just see whether it aligns or not. And whenever it's not aligning, let's have a conversation. Let's see where we at. What's the state of play?
Yeah. What's the difference between marketing and sales?
Sales is quite direct. So sales is, for example, when you think of a door-to-door salesman, when you think of an email trying to sell you something, marketing is more of the strategy. So, for example, coming back to what we spoke about previously, marketing would be the strategy, and sales would be a part of the tactics, let's say.
I heard somebody describe yesterday the difference, in a sense, between marketing and sales is that marketing opens the door and sales is what goes through the door.
You
I
can
thought
put
that
it
was
that way.
I thought that was an interesting way to put it. There's
You,
probably merit to that.
you can put it that way. Yeah. You can. You can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, with your Kellogg training and strategies and so on, what's the framework you use on Monday morning?
Well, like I said previously, these are the we call them the 5C, 3V, and 7Ts. The 5C is just understanding the arena you're playing at. The 3Vs is designing the optimal value propositions, and the 7Ts are the product, service, brand, communications, price, incentives, and what was it, distribution. So going analytically through them all, it really gives you a nice perspective, one that would help you kind of have an invisible friend from the outside, which we spoke about a minute ago. Even though he or she is not there, it helps you being a bit more objective about things.
Yeah. Well, you've spoken to audiences of all sizes. Have you ever
Yeah.
yourself experienced stage fright, or has that ever bothered you, or how have you, if you have, how have you dealt with it?
I literally don't have a memory of that because
Hmm.
probably just gone by when I was 6 or 7. So again, I would say it's mileage.
Hmm.
Having a positive attitude, having the right state of mind is great, awesome. But I really believe that there are no shortcuts, and you really have to have the mileage. So I would say to whoever's listening, they should start as early as they can, work their way through all that it is they need in order for them to build that sense of being prepared for many things, one of which obviously being on stage. And that will create the calm, and the calm will build the trust.
Yeah.
So like many things in life, if the fruit isn't mature enough, it's just won't taste as sweet. It will be sour.
Yeah. It is a choice. And in reality, as I said before, I think unless somebody really hates you or some incredible controversial thing is going on, unless that's the case, audiences want you to succeed and they want to hear what you have to say. And you specifically, I would think, have a brand that says you know what you're talking about, and so people want to hear from you, which is great.
Yeah, and it's also the responsibility of not delivering below the expectations, because
Hmm.
it is a thing. And if you're, again, if you're not speaking from the ego perspective, you will always have that sense of ownership of your brand, and being and owing, let's say, to the public, or whoever it is that's devoted their time and attention to you. So not only on stage, but it's also my mantra in the company, within the agency, and the 30 people that's working as full timers in the agency. You really should always over deliver. It's a must. Whatever it is that you feel it's the default, try to push a bit better than that.
Yeah. But that's a personal choice that you can make and make happen.
Yeah, it's totally up to you.
Yeah,
Totally.
it is. Well, when you're driving all of this, it is also true that when you speak to a lot of people, do you sometimes find that you're not connecting and you have to sort of adjust your presentation to reconnect with them? I found that sometimes where I'll be speaking to people and something that I've used a number of times may not click with a particular audience, but I can sense it when that happens, and I can change what I'm saying on the fly and do that until I'm able to reconnect and establish that relationship again. And I think that's so important to be able to do. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, definitely. Not only with audiences, but with one-on-one with persons as
Hmm.
well. It just happens a lot. And uh, one of the most important things is I always say, feeling the temperature of the person or the
Right.
room,
Right.
whatever it is. And you really should adjust. But again, it really takes experience. I have this
Hmm.
really young new employee who's just really ambitious, really learns a lot, studies a lot, is the first one in, the last one out, etc. And you know I just see myself in him from when I was young, but I also see that lack of his experience, Mike. So yeah, he knows a lot. Yeah, he knew a lot probably. Yeah, he's feeling confident, and yeah, I was feeling confident. But then when you put him in a meeting, let's say, the lack of experience always starts to
Hmm.
show. For example, what you talk about, it takes experience for a person to sense the temperature. You know what I'm saying? And it takes even more experience for a person to kind of change lanes in real time in order to recalibrate and do the right thing moving forward. So again, this shouldn't disappoint people. It's just an affirmation that they're on the right path, and they should stay and get the mileage necessary for them to be truly wonderful.
Yeah, you have, and when something isn't quite right, then your job is to figure out what it is, and you do have to learn to do that on the fly. But that's what experience is all about. And some of
Yeah.
that you can teach to people, and some of that they have to discover it for themselves. But clearly, you're able to be a part of helping them figure that out, which is so important.
Yeah, and also you have to be careful about teaching. And I know you've mentored a lot of people as well, and I want to see your perspective on this one. Um, Teaching as a philosophical thing now, it's also a bit tricky because obviously this doesn't belong to any kinds of teachings. There is a certain martial arts or whatever. This is predetermined and this is set in stone. This is the way you do things. But it's more of in the lanes that we're talking about now. Or, for example, let's say, how do you teach a person being enlightened or spiritual? Or, I don't know, these are so uniquely yours, these ways of becoming something, of becoming experience, or using your certain tips and tricks, that it's a bit tricky when you try to teach another person because you're teaching them your way, which is not always applicable to them and their style or character, etc. So when you're in the shoes of a mentor, you really have to be careful about who are you teaching and what are you teaching them. And just like you said, recalibrating with your audiences, you really also recalibrate with your with the person you're mentoring.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well, and I learned actually over the last like year and a half, something I always, and I've talked about this before on this podcast. I've said to people for years when I would record my presentations, and I like to record them to be able to go back and listen. I hear what I hear, and every time I listen to a recording, I learn from it. And I've said I do that because I'm my own worst critic, because nobody's going to criticize me more heavily than I am.
Nobody.
But I heard in a book or somewhere I read something about the fact that in reality nobody can teach you anything. You're the only one who can teach you. They can present information, they can give you data, but you are the only one who can teach you. And so I changed what I said to or from I'm my own worst critic to I'm my own best teacher. What a positive difference that made.
Oh yeah.
And what
Oh
a
yeah.
tremendous change. It didn't change my fear of listening to recordings, but it was so much more positive and so much more correct to say I'm my own best teacher, because it's true.
And it's so true. Exactly. And it is right on the nose of what I'm talking about, Mike.
Yeah.
And this is such a great sentence, and I will use it, man. I'm my own best teacher. I love it.
Yeah. So you talked before about the fact that you're working in a reasonably small area compared to like working in the United States and so on. What are the pros and cons of being a big fish in a small pond, or a small fish in a big pond?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely access, I would say, is a huge pro. Access to contacts, people, and also it's probably a bit more easier to go over the water, let's say, and be recognized when you're good, because there's not so much water to begin with.
Right.
Another thing would be probably intimacy with decision makers, because you have that access. It's also a lot. You tend to see them more and develop this friendship with them. So yeah, it helps a lot. Reputation compounds faster in smaller markets, definitely as well. Another thing would be probably working for international clients. Obviously, it's a good time is being able to deliver same or even better quality for a lower price.
Mm-hmm.
That and on the con side, a huge con is limited scale, huge one, because like I said, you're speedy on the top, but you're speedy reaching the top as well. So you hit your head, and just can pierce the membrane, if you like. So
Yeah.
the scale is limited, and all of a sudden, you if you want to grow, the only way to grow is international and exporting and whatever. There's limited pool of talent as well, so you
Mm-hmm.
really have to work on your brand and really have to work on being attractive for talents rather than fight for them because they're scarce. That's a pretty big con as well. Yeah, I would leave it at that.
Have you ever read the book David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell? The tipping
Probably,
point
yeah, yeah,
guy.
yeah. Yeah. Read two or three of his books. I don't
In
remember reading that one, to be
in
honest.
David and Goliath, he talks about he talks about people going to a college and the advantage of not going to a big school like Harvard, but going to a
Right.
smaller school, which is all about being potentially a bigger fish in a smaller pond. But you also get so much more unless your mental makeup is such that you can really deal with all the things that come from being in a huge school. And I appreciate that. I needless to say, didn't read it when I was in college because it came out years and years and years later, but I resonate with it. I think it's very true. And there's so much
Oh yeah,
more advantage to being in a smaller school or a smaller pond in whatever you're doing, because you can always expand if you learn how to do it. But but starting and developing that brand and that reputation and then taking it to a larger environment makes a lot of sense.
exactly. I mean, it's mostly optics.
Yeah.
So if you design for it, it's there's always potential. And again, talking about being a big fish in a smaller pond, like how would I promise UK or US clients the marketing trinity, as we call it, which is speedy, good quality, and low cost? How can I deliver that smart speed, baked in quality, and cost efficiency and cost advantage if I was based over there? It's just not possible. And then you can from here because of the advantage you have with the lower net salary from the fantastic pool of talent that you have. So, like you say, play with what you have, figure out your angle, use it to the max.
Yeah. And it's always about being strategic.
It's always. I mean, that's also one thing I learned as I grew and coming back to where we started about maturing. That going back to that sense of being overconfident and feeling like a Superman or whatever, you just tend to skip necessary steps, Mike,
Yeah.
if I can put it that way, and that's not strategic at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you really have to work your way the proper way, the right way. You work your way up. Yeah.
Well, so you clearly are an entrepreneur. You work a lot, but you also do have a family, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with, or what are your thoughts about the whole concept of work-life balance?
I mean, it's it's a thing that is talked about a lot, and to be honest, like I don't have a problem with it, but also I don't understand the push of the concept, meaning it should come naturally to you. You know what I'm saying? So why would you need a reason to spend time with your kids? Why would any business be the reason you're not seeing your kids for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe coming from a smaller country with a different culture or whatever played its part, or maybe it's just human nature. But I sort of see things as, yeah, you push the limit and do your best in business, or the work part of the sentence, and you do your best to a certain point. Or beyond that point, it's not balance. It's just that you're a father, and that's it. You stop being an entrepreneur, and you start being a father again, and that should come naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I don't like people putting slots in their calendars for the kids, or whatever. I mean, people should find their thresholds, and not having them is a red flag for me.
Well, yeah, I think it is all about. Well, they say that marriage is work. They say that raising a child is work. Okay, so it's another part of your job, but it's as much or more important part of your job than other things, and you do have to do it, and you have to recognize that that's part of what you do, and like with the other part of work, as it were, it's also something that she should be and must be very joyful, and
Yeah,
that's the part of the work where you can have more fun, probably.
yeah. And I like what you said. Yeah, it's work. I mean, yeah, it's tough, obviously, and you shouldn't expect it to be easy, and it shouldn't be easy. I mean, I had a guest on my talk show, this really famous regional singer from Bosnia, and he talked about the war in Bosnia in the 90s.
Mm.
And we kind of came to the conclusion that however bad it sounds, it's always the the issues and the tough things and the tough experiences and the bad days that make you a better human after all.
Yeah.
If it's a smooth sailing, you just either the deviate, or, or how can I put it, or you're just stuck where you're at, and not being able to um, uh, go up and develop yourself, and become a better man and more mature and more strong, etc. It's really a waste for someone's life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. But there's so many ways to make it work. And balance is all about you making choices and you recognizing what you need to do because it's what you set out, what you chose to do in the first place. So you need to fulfill your obligations, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. It's just I get the sense that people are not quite familiar with the concept of responsibility, Mike.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in business, when I talk to owners and CEOs, and we talk to their employees, etc. Number one reason for things failing is just lack of accountability and lack of responsibility within the chain of management.
Hmm.
And that's the same in life.
It is the
Like,
same in life.
you become a father just because it's it's the age where it's appropriate. No, no, you're making a big mistake.
Yep.
Or I don't know. I mean, there are millions of examples where people do it out of X and Y, and not because it's their choice and they are standing by it.
Yeah. Do you find there are people who reach out to you and they want to be mentored or coached by you? And do you do any of that?
Yeah, there are couple of great examples within the agency. So from young employees, also some people that I have recruited to be our collaborators. I really tend to hire people not because I need their positions, not only hire, but just start working with them in one of many areas, let's say, not because I need their position. It's just that I appreciate what they are, and it is always finding that they have three pillars, I would say, which is they have smart, so there's street smart, intelligent people. They have integrity, which is the second thing. The third thing would be, I'm just thinking in Macedonia now. So, it crossed my mind. So, yeah, never mind. So it's just that these traits, let's say, the third one was let's say energy,
Okay,
or passion, or however we want to put it. So these three things, energy, intelligence, and integrity, they're just so rare to find in a single person.
Yeah.
Within the business area, and not only in business, that when you find them, I really want to make sure I work with them.
Yeah.
Because they're just so rare.
Yeah.
So more than once, collaborator became an even bigger collaborator, and then became a full employee, or let's say an employee then branched out with their own thing, but we continued working because obviously he had these three things. So whenever I see a person having them, and if it's a young person, even better, because they have the potential and they have the straight road in front of them. And I feel it's a shame not helping them. I feel it's a shame not offering to be of assistance and being a friend, at least. And if they want you to become a mentor, even better. But it's not a thing that you put on them. It's a thing that they have to feel the need themselves, and they reach out to you, right?
Well, if people want to reach out to you and talk with you or interact, how do they do that?
So I'm not a big social media guy. Obviously, we have the talk show links, etc., on social media, blah blah blah. I'm really easy to find on email, and I think I've given you my email, so please feel free to write it in the show notes or whatever. And and also they can reach me on LinkedIn, for example, which I visit 2 or 3 times a week, definitely.
What's your LinkedIn name?
It's Zarko Dimitrioski. So it's like you
Zarko.
Zarko Dimitrioski.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I hope people will reach out. I think you've offered a lot of really interesting and relevant and appropriate kinds of good business and marketing advice, and I hope people will listen to this and will take advantage of it and reach out to you. I think that would be so cool. For me, I want to thank you all for being here and listening to Zarko and me talk and interact. I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. That's michaelhi@accessibe.com. Wherever you're observing the podcast today, please give us a 5-star rating and please do a review. We love reviews. We appreciate reviews, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So please feel free to email me. And you can always find all of our podcasts online, or you can always go to Michael Hingson, MichaelHingson.com/podcast. If you know anyone who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, or you think would be a good guest, and Zarko, you as well, please feel free to introduce us. We're always looking for more people to come on and help show everyone that we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. But I do want to thank you, Zarko, for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate all your time today.
Mike, real pleasure, privilege, and honor, and God bless you.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.